Welcome back, guys, or if you're new to my channel, this is Automotive Anonymous. That's a 2025 Mazda CX-50 Turbo Premium. That's the 2025 Subaru Outback Touring XT. So these are basically both very high trim levels of an all-wheel drive capable top safety pick plus turbo crossover SUV, and a lot of you guys compared these, so here is a comparison review of these. We're going to talk about both of them for maybe 3 or 4 minutes, a lot of technical specs, and then we'll dive through the vehicle from the front to the back, and yeah, we'll share how well these do, how they compete against each other, and which one you should maybe spend your $40,000+ on. But if you are new to my channel, you really should know that I've owned a Turbo Outback for about 3 years, an Outback Wilderness, and I used to own a Mazda Miata, so I'm very familiar with these. I've also driven a couple dozen of each of these platforms. So with that said, if you guys get anything out of this video today, please consider liking this video, comment your thoughts and opinions below, subscribe if you haven't already. Also, huge thanks to Goody Motor Mazda and Twin Falls Subaru. They both sell below MSRP. They both ship all over the country, so I'll link them below in the description. Check them out. They are some of the best dealerships to work with. And with that said, let's get right into this comparison review. I'm gonna start with the CX-50 first for the specs, but if you guys are comparing these two vehicles, I think you're deciding between one good choice or another. They both have a pretty proven record, at least the platform that these are on. They're both very safe. At this price point, they have a lot of creature comforts, a lot of safety. They do have the power that a lot of you guys are gonna want and enjoy to keep you and your family safe and to help merge on traffic and just have a little bit more fun if that's what you're into. But you really can't go wrong with either of these two vehicles, and they're both by very reputable Japanese automakers. So basically, if you're comparing these two, you're well off to begin with, but always test drive the competition. So test drive these, test drive the Toyota, the Hyundai, the Nissan, the American competitors, heck, even the Germans if you're really into it, before you make your final decision, because at the end of the day, I want you guys to make the right decision for you, and I want future you to be happy with the current decisions that you are considering. But anyways, this is the Mazda CX-50. For 2025, it's now in the 3rd model year, because this was a brand new vehicle, a brand new model just 2 years ago, or 3 technical production years ago for 2023. It actually has not sold nearly as well as I think Mazda was expecting. It only sold about 20,000 units the first year, about 40,000 units the second year, so we'll see what it does for 2025. It definitely does not sell like its sibling, the CX-5, which is well over 100,000 units every single year. But this also has a more limited platform. It's a more limited model. It's only sold in North America, so Canada, the United States, and Mexico, with the United States being the #1 volume seller there. And it's also assembled and sold in China. But if you are in the North American market, which probably most of you guys are watching my video, it's actually homegrown. It's assembled in Alabama, so it's a pretty local vehicle. You can get these fairly affordably. A base model starts at about $30,000. That is before extra options and delivery. There are 7 trim levels. So a higher trim level like this being the 6th of the 7th highest, with only the Turbo Premium Plus being higher, this one actually starts at about $43,000. Doesn't really have any extra options, so with delivery it's about $44,000 before Goody Mazda gives you a discount on it. But at that price point, you really do get a lot of stuff that you're about to see. Also, I almost forgot to mention the colors I chose for today's video. This is Polymetal Gray Metallic, which has the terracotta interior, which is a really nice combo. So are the red leather seats on Polymetal Gray. It's very sparkly. I think it looks really good in person. And because I had this bluish one, I decided to grab a blue, cosmic blue Outback. This one does not have the brown leather seats, because that is what I've had in the individual reviews of the XT and the non-XT Outback for this year. So I decided let's just grab one with black seats. The price difference is a little bit different. In fact, this one's actually cheaper than that one. But anyways, this is the Outback. It's been around for quite a while because the first one came out back in 1995. It's basically the lifted wagon version of the Legacy sedan, which the Legacy is disappearing after this model year. And this is the last year of the 6th generation of the Outback, so it's had about 30 years to get more refined, whereas the CX-50 has had technically 2 or 3. Anyways, these are a pretty high seller for Subaru. They sell over 100,000 units every single year, sometimes up to about 180,000 units. It's also sold in North America and Australia. These ones are assembled kind of near the Mazdas in Alabama, but this is Lafayette, Indiana, so it's at least the same side of the country, basically. And they do a lot of things really well. Both of these vehicles, they have a competent all-wheel drive system, top safety pick rating. Again, they both basically, in the way that they're configured, they have blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert, all the adaptive safety features, lane keep assist, lane departure warning, adaptive cruise, pedestrian braking, basically anything that you might need, want, or wish you had. These two fairly loaded, fairly expensive crossovers are going to have that. Technically, the Outback is somehow a mid-sized SUV, whereas the CX-50 is a compact crossover SUV. So kind of interesting how their classes, how they're rated, but more on that in just a bit. Also, if you guys would be so kind to comment below which one you think looks better, I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions on that. Just imagine these are both sitting on a dirt lot at a trailhead, because they're both going to get you there. But the CX-50, its proportions, being the compact crossover, it's actually only 15.4 feet long. The wheelbase is the same as the Outback's, 9 feet. It has 8.6 inches of ground clearance, roughly or pretty close to a 4 final drive ratio, just like the Outback. And it weighs about 3,900 pounds, again, very similar to the Outback. It's about 6¼ feet wide and about 5¼ feet tall, so it actually looks really well planted and very stanced, very aggressive on the road. It even has functional aerodynamics through the grille, unlike the Outback. But the back cladding is just fake, it's just extra cladding. Overall, I think this is a really aggressive, really wide fendered looking SUV, and honestly, I like it a lot. Its payload capacity is about 850 pounds, so a little bit less than the Outback, but do the looks make up for it? Maybe they do. And then if you have a non-turbo, you can tow about 2,000 pounds. If you have a turbo like this, you can tow about 3,500 pounds. Meanwhile, the wagon, which is basically, again, the lifted legacy sedan, it was redesigned or refreshed slightly in 2023. The cladding, it looks a little bit different. The front end is basically the main thing that has changed. But this wagon, again, being a mid-size crossover technically, it's 16 feet long. So it's about a ½ foot longer than the Mazda. It is about 6 feet wide, so a little bit more narrow, and a little bit taller at about 5½ feet tall. So it's a little bit more rectangular going down the road than the Mazda. But overall, it does a pretty good job. It feels planted because it has the same 9-foot wheelbase, the same curb weight at about 3,900 pounds, slightly beats it in the payload capacity at 900 pounds, which is basically across the board standard for all Subarus. This one being the turboed with the CVT transmission, it can tow 3,500 pounds just like the Mazda. But if you have a non-turbo one, if you want to save a few grand, you're going to actually be able to out-tow the Mazda at about 2,700 pounds. And then the ground clearance is basically identical, 8.7 inches on this one. With the wheelbase, you're going to have the same breakover angle. And then it has a 390 final drive ratio. And now we're going to go from the hoods to the cargo capacity and to everything in between. So maybe this time we'll start with the Turbo Outback and we'll see who does a turbo engine better. So top mount intercooler, induction to cool it down. If you guys can see that, there's no external hood scoop this time. It's just what you have right there. But it makes 260 horsepower and 277 torque. The torque comes on at about 2,000 RPM, so it's pretty low in the RPM band. You're going to notice a lot of colors under the hood and a lot of mechanical components. All of your reservoirs, filters, fluids, it's all easy to get to. You have a fuse box on each side, you have the battery, you have the induction. The turbo is on the front, bottom of the engine. It's hard to find, which is a ding. I don't like that as much. And the alternator, it's front facing, the serpentine belt, so a lot of maintenance items on this might be pretty easy to do. But if we come over to the Mazda, it makes about the same power if you have it on 91 octane, whereas the Outback only needed 87. So on 87 octane, this only makes 227 horse, 310 torque. So less horsepower, but more torque. And if you fuel it up with some dyno juice that's 91 octane, you're actually gonna outdo the torque even more, but still not the horsepower, because it's 256 horsepower, 320 pound-feet of torque. Also, your reservoirs are pretty easy to identify and find, but they're not together as much as the Outback, if you guys see that. Anyways, filter, battery on the driver's side. But what I do like about this is the turbo. It's way easier to find and to work on. If you ever have to do any exhaust work maintenance back there, it's right in front of the firewall. You do have a transversely mounted setup. So you do have an engine mount right there. You have an alternator down there. You have the serpentine belt. So some maintenance items I could see being easier to do on that. But is this going to be a bulletproof engine just as reliable, maybe even more reliable? At least it's been in more vehicles, or for longer sometimes than some of these. I don't know. I guess we'll tell. I guess we'll find out. But on the forums, I really don't hear about any engine problems or transmission problems with either of these vehicles. They seem to both be very, very reliable. But we can't forget that the Mazda has hood struts, no prop rod. So I guess if that's a category, it wins by a landslide on that category. I'm not necessarily sure which rear end I think looks better. I think they both look kind of bland if we're being honest, but that's not a bad thing because you don't want your family to get a lot of attention from the rear and people to be messing with you. I do joke around that the CX-50 looks like a stern, frowny face with sideburns from the fake aerodynamics, the frowny face in the nose, and then the aggressive, stern-looking eyes. The Outback, I don't really know how to describe it, which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But anyways, I need you guys to trust me for a minute. I'm going to push the trunk or the hatch release buttons at the same time. We're going to see which one actually registers and opens faster, and then we'll talk about that one first in 3, 2, 1, let's go. So the Subaru beeped first, I think. The Mazda started moving first, and the Subaru actually finished first. So we'll go over here first. Depending on if you have the subwoofer or not, like this one has, you have about 33, 34 cubic feet of room. You have some bag clips, some basic tie downs, as well as on the corners. You have a sunshade just the way this one's configured, but the Mazda can have that as well. You can drop the seats with a handle. If the seat belts, being a top safety pick, plus didn't do such a good job to hold those up. Let's see if I can push those down. And you can see it lays flat. 16 cubic feet in here, and that's really where this thing shines. There is just so much cargo capacity because when the seats are down, you actually have in the 70 cubic foot range, around 75. All-weather mat, a little bit of mesh storage right here. And then you have your tools down here, a spot to store the sunshade if you don't want that, or the privacy shade, scissor jack, temporary spare tire with some more storage down here. So not too bad. You also can lock and lower or just lower. And now let's come over to the Mazda. Basically almost the same cubic space back here. It's only a little bit less, at 31 cubic feet, but you can also drop the seats. Those drop a little bit easier, but you probably heard that it rubbed against the driver's seat where I had it positioned because it's not as long of a vehicle. Otherwise, LED lighting. You can also have a privacy shade, bag clips basically, some storage back here, some tie downs on each corner. Basically, these are very similar. Temporary spare and subwoofer down here with storage on the sides. And then you can lock and lower or just lower. And both of these vehicles, you can set the hatch height if you want because they do open pretty high above the roof. So just be careful if you're in your garage opening it up that you don't overdo it. Anyways, let's see which one can lower faster. And again, trust me that I'm pushing these at the same time. In 3, 2, 1, let's go. So the Subaru is faster, but I believe it's only a single electronic shock where these are double. So that might be more reliable in the long run. That's faster, more convenient. It's up to you which one's better. But since the Subaru won the hatch test, let's hop inside. I don't necessarily love the chrome, but there are 9 trim levels of the Outback. So some of you guys, maybe 1/9 of you like that. It's just not for me. The paint, cosmic blue, seriously, so much sparkle, so much, you know, niceness to it. I don't necessarily like this. I don't know if these would ever fall off or if those are like how well those are stuck on. But anyways, sitting in the driver's seat and looking at the door panel, it's all black materials, a lot of variety. You have some piano black. You have some like brushed aluminum, silver. It actually looks different colored than it does here, but that's probably just the light and the shadowing because it's all one continuous piece. You have an armrest, fairly wide, not overly wide like a truck. Big handle. You have Harman Kardon speakers, bottle holder, snack pocket. Most of these vehicles need more door storage. They need a bigger door pocket, something like the Honda Pilot or Passport have. Otherwise, Subaru on the door sill, rubberized mats, rubberized pedals, hood release. Oops, sorry about that, guys. On my Outback, that's actually where I have the activation switch hidden on my light bar. A few options here, ventilation, chirp reset, lighting stock, and then here are your heated leather thigh bolstered extended seats. And you have just a baby size, legacy size sedan sunroof up top. And then this one you can see it's currently discounted about $3,000. So even though at MSRP is a little bit more than the Mazda, it's currently being sold for at least $42,000 or less. And then the Mazda, again with polymetal gray metallic paint. I just love that. Whenever I have the chance to drive this color on a vehicle, I usually opt for that. Although I do need to have a variety for you guys who don't just want the same thing over and over again. But the door panel, it's really nice. You have the terracotta interior, some baseball stitching, a few different materials like the Subaru, although it looks a little bit more uniform in design than the Subaru did. Bigger door panel, pocket, speaker, Bose speaker. Bose and Harman Kardon, they're fairly similar. Bose might actually sound a little bit better, but you don't have anything on the door sill. Your rubberized mats are not yet installed. The pedals are right there, hood release. No fuse box access, but you can see the airbag just like the Outback had. You have some ventilation, you have memory seats, you have options here, a few blank buttons, ventilation, lighting stock. And then here is your non-thigh bolstered, heated, ventilated power seat with a bigger panoramic moonroof up top. And while everything we just talked about is fine and dandy, if you're the owner of one of these vehicles, this is where you're spending most of the time. It's in the driver's seat. So it's pretty hot outside at this point. Let's fire it up, push button start. Needles dance, steering responsive, headlights flash. You have just a basic lighting heads-up display. It's not nearly as intuitive as the Mazda, but you do have a tilting and telescoping steering wheel, so it's pretty easy to find a nice position. Paddle shifters, heated leather steering wheel, feels really good. The horn sounds pretty nice. I really like this horn extension piece down here. You can go through your info right there. You have a few good bits of information. You can see lots of lights are on. This has so many safety features. And then voice and volume on the left, adaptive cruise on the right, paddle shifters if I haven't already mentioned that. What I don't like about this is everything is controlled through the screen. We own 2 of these Subarus with this. You know, I'm used to it, it's okay. I just wish there were more physical buttons and you weren't so tied up in the screen, because if this is all about safety, you don't want to be distracted looking at the screen. But you do have a few climate control buttons and necessities. These don't move down here. Ventilated seats, which actually feel really good right now. I do turn auto start stop off every time, but even auto vehicle hold, it's through the screen. So is traction control right there, and another auto vehicle hold button right there. Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, standard on both of these, which is nice. You have electronic parking brake. Some pretty good plugins and a fast USB-C storage tray right here. I don't recommend you get the wireless charger. I actually had that removed in mine and put this basic tray in, so you'd actually have some storage. Front-facing camera, which I don't believe the Mazda has. Trajectory lines do not move. Clarity is that of a potato, but overall, it actually is a really nice feature. I really like it. But this Touring XT only has stage 1 X mode. It doesn't have the second stage of program, which is even more aggressive. But you're not often going to actually need that. Anyways, let's see, you have some cup holders. They're big, they're placed really well. And then you have a 2-stage center console with a CD player in here and a 12-volt. This doesn't always come down very easily when this is brand new, so I might have to use both hands for just a second to get the tray to drop. There we go. 2025 model years are the first time that those have been sticking on me in my experience. But overall, you have the digital rear view camera. Kind of trippy, kind of cool. Depends on who you are, what you like. Garage door openers, you can adjust it also as the compass. You have your sunglass holder. LED lighting, you have the sunshade, which is physically maneuvered on this one and then electronically controlled. This does slide, a nice touch, and should have LED lighting with the mirror. Yep. Anyways, let's hop out and get into the Mazda. Sitting inside the Mazda, one thing that this company does really well is design comfortable seats and a really nice driving layout. I actually like the Outback seating position, maybe more because the window and the dashboard are lower, so you do have better visibility than you have in this. The windows are just physically larger, but you still, you know, you can see everything. The side mirrors are big on this, so while they're sporty looking, you can check out those big hips. You can see everything you need to see. The pillars aren't overly large, and you have a lot of natural light in here, which is nice. But when we fire it up, the needles, they don't dance. But you do have a basic heads-up display, which looks cool, and it's a better one than the Subaru. You have paddle shifters, leather heated wheel. The heated feature is right there. Physical climate controls, which I really like. The horn, a little bit higher pitch than the Subaru. Vents are angled right at you. Everything is just nice. I do like this big beefy handle, and if you go through the info display, you have probably a similar amount of stuff, but the electronic portion of that gauge actually moves, and the ones on the periphery are physical. So I actually like the display of this quite a lot. A lot of you guys, though, you don't like this display or the Subarus. I personally actually really like this. It has the scrolly dial, so you can use that and be less distracted trying to reach for it and touch it while you're driving. Plus, it's not in your visibility if you look at this angle right here. So it's not really a focus on the electronics, it's a focus on the driving experience. With these do drive quite sporty. Anyways, physical climates, heated seats, ventilated seats, hazards. You have a 12-volt, you have just a tiny bit of storage, you have some not well-placed cup holders. Seriously, the Outback totally takes it away because you can't fit your child-size 1-gallon soda causing diabetes right here in this one, which is a shame. You have a backup camera, but the trajectory lines do not move like the Subarus. Clarity, though, is better. You also have a few basic drive modes, so you can go up for sport or down for off-road to change the driving feel and the power delivery. You also have electronic parking brake, auto vehicle hold. You have your power and volume button, and then you can set something up with Star. And I do not like this center console at all. It looks cool in practice. In theory, it has a wireless charger in front of it, but it's just so inconvenient and awkward. And look how tall that thing is. You have to really reach over it, and it's awkward to put stuff straight down like you're landing a spaceship or something. So anyways, you have garage door openers. This doesn't appear to be an auto dimming mirror. You have some LED lighting, which is really good. You have a sunglass holder. but this does not slide. It only has an extension piece. It does have LED lighting up top, mirror right there. And again, look at that panoramic sunroof, pretty cool. And it does have a physical button to move the shade, so you don't even have to reach that far back because that would be hard to do. Anyways, let's turn it off and we'll hop in the back of the Subaru. The back door panel of this Subaru, basically it's all black. It's not my favorite necessarily in color, so maybe consider the Napa brown leather interior if you are going to splurge on the Touring XT. But, you know, it's soft touch, it's nice, it's going to age well. They've aged super, super well in my own Outback. And then check out the huge bench, check out all the knee room. You can even recline the seat, so you can recline it a little bit. Check this out when I pull it forward. So even if it's most front upright position, sitting behind myself, I have quite a bit of room. I have more than my first digit, my first finger right there. Pockets, phone pocket, or pamphlet holder if you're old school. You have some vents, you have some heated seats, you have some plug-ins, and the seats are actually light enough that I can just easily do that with one hand. And you still have the hump right here, so middle occupants probably not going to be thrilled. But check out the visibility, check out everything that you get in this Outback. It's actually pretty comfortable back here. The vents in this do a really good job. If you have kids or old people back here, you are going to want to have ventilation. One of the biggest disappointments I find in a lot of modern vehicles like mid-sized trucks and other things like that is they don't have vents in the back. And seriously, if you don't want people having a heat stroke, you're going to need to have some vents put in. So good job to the Japanese automakers. And then the CX-50, which has a nice bulge in the line outlining this wide 6.25 foot fender. The door panel looks really nice, but you do notice a few cheaper parts than the front, which isn't really surprising, but you do get the nice terracotta interior still on the armrest and the big beefy handle. The seat does look physically thicker than the Subarus. You'll notice there's less space up front, and I don't personally see actually, let's try. Yeah, I don't see a recline feature on this one. If I'm missing that, please comment below and let me know that I need to pay better attention. But otherwise, sitting in here, only that much room in front of my knees, not as much as the Subaru. Remember, that was past my first joint right there. Ventilation. I actually have the car back on. It feels pretty good. Heated seats and plugins. The armrest in this, I think, is better than the Subarus. It's wider. It feels just as sturdy. Visibility, not quite as good. The windows are a little bit smaller, but I at least have enough room above my head, just not quite as much as the Subaru. Probably partially due to the huge extra panel of glass right there. But still, this would be a nice place to be. A nice place to go on a drive or a road trip if you're being chauffeured. Anyways, let's hop out and we'll wrap this video up. So ultimately, guys, I know I've been rambling on for quite a while, but I've driven a lot of these, and I'm comparing these because they are very good choices. Just like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, if these are the two crossovers that you're comparing, you've basically won already because you're making good decisions. They are fairly expensive. If you want a cheaper trim level, you could find each of them for about 30 grand if you just want the basic necessities, not all the luxurious wants and desires that are beyond the needs that you actually might have. But they're both really good vehicles. They're both really good options. Personally, I'm glad that they're top safety picks. I do physical therapy as my real day job, so I value that a lot. And I'm glad that a lot of the Japanese automakers provide that, and they actually care about your safety. Probably because they want you to survive accidents or avoid accidents and buy more of their vehicles so that they have returning customers. But overall, they're pretty cool. I do like the power delivery of this. I like knowing it's a 6-speed automatic transmission. I like knowing that it does have more power on 91 octane than we got to see today, which, by the way, this one today did a low 7-second true time 0 to 60. These do a high 6 to low 7 in reality. Just depends on the elements, the altitude, the heat, the moisture, all the things in there. Basically, they're on par with each other. Performance is basically the exact same in the turbo model. In the non-turbo model, they're about the same. They both do around 9 or 10 seconds 0 to 60 where I'm at, which is my reality. But overall, having bright LED headlights, having enough cargo capacity in the rear, and being able to fit full-size adults in the back seat, I don't think you can go wrong either way. I wish there were more flamboyant colors like yellow and reds and oranges and stuff like that for these mildly soft roader crossovers, but even in the metallic paint colors that they each have today, I think they look really good. And I know I'm rambling on at this point, so if you got anything out of this video, please consider liking this video. Comment your thoughts and opinions below. Subscribe if you haven't already. Check out Goody Mazda, Twin Falls Subaru, two of the best dealerships in the country. And with that said, I wish you guys the best. Hope you take care. And until next time, see ya.